There's been this giant rise, especially among young men of my generation, Generation Z. There's a group of them that's going to Catholicism. Yeah. There's also a great group that's going toward the Greek Orthodox Church. And I was so interested when we talked over the phone. That's something your church has been seeing recently.
Why are young men especially coming to our church? When I was searching for truth, when I was 18 years old, I had to spend thousands of dollars to go to college, and I had to go to libraries, and you just couldn't get what you need in a bookstore. And now you can take your phone out with the AI, and I know not everything the AI says is correct, but I'll tell you what, it's just awesome. I mean, whatever conclusions people come to, they're able to just do their study in such a small amount of time that I had to spend years.
Welcome back to the Fight for Your City podcast. Today, I have a friend that I've been meeting to get in the studio for some time. I don't know if you know this, Daniel, but this is a very exciting episode for a lot of people in my circles, especially for a friend of mine, Brooks Van Gilder in Arkansas, a friend of my little brother, who started going to a Greek Orthodox church years ago. And so he's really wanted me to interview someone from the Greek Orthodox Church.
Where is he from originally?
Where's he from originally?
Yeah.
Whole life in Northeast Arkansas.
Okay, very good.
Whole life.
Yeah.
And so before I get into some of that, can you just give me a little bit about your background, what kind of led you to where you're at in ministry today?
Well, I am the last year of the baby boomers, 1964. So okay. I did have World War II parents, but I'm kind of like a blend of Gen X and boomer.
Okay.
Now I know boomers become a bad word.
In some ways,
it was a bad word to me for years, because being the last year of the baby boomers, I knew what we were like. But we have a lot of good things about us, too. Grew up in a nominal kind of Baptist home, God-fearing parents. Different reasons had lapsed going to church. In my teenage years, I started searching and tried different churches. And I ended up actually coming into relationship with the church through the Jesus movement. I caught the very tail end of that.
Okay, so like the movie Jesus Revolution that came out years ago.
I lived it.
Okay,
I lived it. I went into coffee houses. They're dressed like hippies. They're playing their guitars, strumming the good. It was very worshipful, very good, beautiful music. And went to it. My first church was called Shalom House.
Okay,
up in Michigan. And it was good people. A lot of them were former Catholics. I look back now, but there were a lot of different people involved in that. And I was actually baptized in a lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The pastor at the time, he said, "The way I'm baptizing you, everybody will accept it." Well, he's almost right. Yeah. But he did 3 immersions in the name of the Father, up, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So it's interesting. And I remember even back then, maybe I was around 18, 19, I stumbled across a book at a Christian bookstore about baptism in the early church, and it gave quotes from the 3rd, 4th century from church fathers about what takes place in baptism, being transformed from darkness to light, sin to grace, and I hungered for that. And so from there, I went to Southeastern, now University College, Evangelical College, and I came there with the intention of being a education major, but the first semester in the summer school, I took an Old Testament survey class, and I couldn't help myself. I changed the Bible.
Oh, man.
So majored in Bible, minored in biblical languages, and which produces no job whatsoever. But let's see. Going forward, while I was in college, I was continuing to, I've been somebody who searched and spent time as an Anglo-Catholic.
Okay. Really
enriched by that tradition. I've got a lot of English in me. I'm British, a lot of me is Irish, Scots, British, English. And then went to Boston College Graduate School of Theology, did a semester of study there in church history. 2 programs that paid for me there. UPS, I had a midnight shift. They discontinued their tuition remission program. Army Reserve discontinued.
Man.
That was the end of that money. But it was a formative experience, and at that time I went into the LCMS Lutheran Church.
Okay.
And great experience there too. I met my wife. We married, went to seminary, and after that, I spent 10 years as a Lutheran pastor.
Yeah, that's kind of a shift. It's a little bit.
I think it's a progression
yeah.
for me.
So what is Anglo-Catholic? What does that look like? I'm not familiar with that.
High liturgical.
Okay.
So Episcopalians who worship with incense, they do the full Anglican liturgy. They practice confession and absolution. They actually have monasteries.
Okay.
So it was birthed in what was called the Oxford movement in the 1800s, where you had a lot of English clergymen searching for the early church and reading about the early church. And your ante-Nicene Fathers set that a lot of people have, it's translated by those guys. That's who translated. Orthodox people didn't translate that whole series. It wasn't Roman Catholics for the most part, if any. May have been a few Presbyterians and the like, but mainly Anglican clergymen that translated that. You know what I'm talking about? That big ante-Nicene Fathers set. It's still, now you probably get it online. You can get it online for free.
Oh, yeah.
But there was a day where it was coveted. It was like $1,000, and then all of a sudden overnight it went down to $200 or $300. I think Hendrickson Publishers got a hold of it, and now who knows how much it costs to buy a hard copy. But
so what was the shift then for you that says, okay, I'm going to go from Anglo-Catholic to now I'm gonna go to Lutheranism? What was kind of the shift for you theologically or maybe relationally that brought you to being a part of that movement?
Well, for me, the moral stances of the LCMS Lutheran Church were more in line with what I thought were biblical principles and principles of the faith.
What is LMCS for people who aren't familiar with Lutherans?
Church Missouri Synod.
All right.
Yeah. So, and I mean, if you want to, I'd hate to, I don't know that I want to mention the exact issues. People can pretty well read between the lines.
Yeah,
but on matters of morality, I am to this day conservative, but I'm not a hateful conservative, we'll say. If a woman has had an abortion, I'm here for them as a priest. I'll tell you a story. Back when I was maybe only 18, 19 years old, a friend of mine were in Michigan, and we went to our first abortion protest. And you had people out there with signs calling these women murderers, baby killers. And we're only like 18, 19 years old. And we actually looked at them, and they're like 30-ish. And we're like, put the signs down, man. Because these women, they're coming to the abortion clinic, and they see these signs. Killers, murderers. We're like, don't do this. We're like, and they listened to us. They put the signs down, and we were more like, hey, we've got an alternative for you. We have adoption. We have adoption agencies. We're here for you. Several of the women, they started coming to us then. Think about it. So that stuck with me. And that's the approach we should have toward everyone, whatever, abortion or what. We all have our things that we need reconciliation with God with, and I think it's important that we be a hospital for sinners.
Absolutely. I was just talking with a fellow pastor about this yesterday. It's really come up last week for some reason. So often we're quick to point out problems, but we're not as quick to offer the solutions.
Yes.
So often there's people who point out and say, you're doing this wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Okay, what's the solution?
Right.
How do we fix that?
Absolutely.
Or else people just feel lost and destructed and all that.
Sure, you leave them feeling condemned or angry or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're not Lutheran now.
Right.
You don't have the collar on. I don't know. Does LMCS do the collar?
Well, my brothers are all over the map in the LCMS church. They might even dress like you.
Might dress like me.
Yeah, some pastors dress like you. Some have ties. Some have polo shirts. Some have clericals. Few wear cassocks, but some do.
Okay. And it was interesting. We'd found out talking over the phone that you actually were leading a church in Southeast Missouri, very near to where I grew up.
Absolutely.
I grew up in Dexter. You grew up in Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
I was there.
So what was the path then to get to Evansville? I guess what I should say, did you come to Evansville first, or did you go to the Greek Orthodox Church first?
Kind of amazing. So it was early in my Lutheran pastorate that I started, continued to study church history. And I'll just say a couple of things that drew me into the Orthodox Church. One was infant communion. I became convinced after studying church history and like Cyprian, St. Cyprian, 250 AD. He's got a writing where there's a baby taking at his mother's breast, nursing, and then he takes communion. I mean, that's unmistakable. And that's only a few generations away from the apostles. And there's no record of a fight in between there. And so I could name more, but there's one.
Okay.
And so that's a big one too. So picture yourself, you're a pastor. And I want to say this, the LCMS Lutheran Church is a great denomination, what have you. And they're great people. I just lost my mentor pastor. In the LCMS, you do a vicarage. It's a third-year internship. And my mentor pastor just passed away. And I just went to his funeral Friday.
Wow.
Over there in the Cape Girardeau area. So, and so anyways, if you're a pastor and there's little children holding out their hands, they want communion and you don't give it to them, and you feel convinced you're supposed to, what do you do? I'm speaking for myself. What do you do? I mean, that was one issue. There's several. But that mentor pastor, whom I really hold in high esteem, I hold him in such high esteem, I don't even want to name his name because I don't want to bring him into my converting to Orthodoxy. He had nothing to do with that. He was a great pastor. And to this day, who I am is shaped by him. But, if you have them holding out their hand, what do you do? And so it makes it impossible to continue to serve there. That's you got to get the initiatory rites right.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was one of the issues.
Okay.
And a lot of people are flocking to our church, like they're flocking to a lot of churches. Now, face it, we don't have the huge crowds of some of the non-denominational churches. Non-denominational churches, many of them are like good stocks. I mean, they rose quickly. How long it'll last, I don't know. We're more of a acquired taste.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
And I was going to talk to you.
We don't have huge, but we are getting a good number of people coming our way.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about in this conversation. We're now seeing, and I see it online all the time. My job is I'm on Christian social media, and there's been this giant rise, especially among young men of my generation, Generation Z, and kind of younger millennials. They've really fallen in love with a high church liturgical style, but also specifically, there's a group of them that's going to Catholicism. Yeah. There's also a great group that's going toward the Greek Orthodox Church. And I was so interested when we talked over the phone. That's something your church has been seeing recently. This isn't just an online trend.
No, it's nationwide.
Yeah. And
it's nationwide.
And it's something that you're seeing.
Yeah. And you say Greek Orthodox, it's interesting. So we're, probably speaking, our patriarch is a patriarch of Antioch, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch, but there's several different jurisdictions in our country, Russian Orthodox, Romanian. Yes. We're all in communion with each other here with the Antiochian Patriarchate.
So do you prefer the name Orthodox Church?
Well, I'll tell you what, around when I haven't gotten to it yet, but when I came here to plant the church here, I would say Orthodox, and people, what? And when I said Greek Orthodox, for some reason, it's like a brand name. People understood, they understood Greek Orthodox over just Orthodox pastor. So Orthodox, even Orthodox Christian. But if I said Greek Orthodox, they got it. But
that's interesting.
Why are young men especially coming to our church? One of it I was going to touch on is, when I was searching for truth, when I was 18 years old, I had to spend thousands of dollars to go to college, and I had to go to libraries, and you just couldn't get what you need in a bookstore. And now you can take your phone out with the AI, and I know not everything the AI says is correct, but I'll tell you what, it's just awesome. I mean, and I won't do it, but if I literally I've done it with people. Did infants take communion in the early church? It'll say yes. And then it gives you all the references. So whatever conclusions people come to, they're able to just do their study in such a small amount of time that I had to spend years. And it's kind of, in a way, I'm like, but it's okay. That's where we're at. I mean, it took our forefathers how long to get from, for 20 miles, many of them had to walk. So I just get matter of fact, I probably drove 10 miles to get here. Our forefathers, most of them didn't have horses. So it took them, so each generation builds off the one before it. So some of it is the ability to study and research. Another thing I think is there's a masculinity amongst the priests in the Orthodox Church. I think the young men are drawn toward that. Men, beards and mustaches. Not that denotes masculinity. Trust me, but they see that men have not been marginalized, and that the faith has a masculine element to it still. What the hidden gem for the young women out there is that we've retained our femininity. We never had a time where women were pushed off. Our iconostasis, which is the screen that's 99.9% of Orthodox churches has the screen, and the altar area is behind it, and the lay people are here. You have Christ here, the Theotokos here, God's birth giver, Mary, with Jesus. Never was there a time, and then pictures, icons of women always adorned our churches. And our feast days, we have a whole feast day towards St. Mary of Egypt, the 5th Sunday in Lent, myrrh-bearing women. So they weren't marginalized. So for men, they're able to get on. I think a lot of them are attracted to it because masculinity has been preserved. But I want to say the femininity has been too, but I think that's a best kept secret. So
every church doesn't have a problem. I say every, like 99.999% of churches have no problem attracting women most of the time.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't know. Yeah.
Well, just most of the time, like I have a friend who planted a church here in Evansville. He said before we had anything else organized, the women already had small group sessions organized.
Now we get couples. We get a lot, and we do have single women come. I'm not telling you, it's not like there's none. They're not like an endangered species. But if you're talking about percentage wise, there's more young men than young women. Yeah. But there's couples that come too.
And that's rare for a lot of churches. Yeah. A lot of churches, like they can get the women, especially single women, somewhere they go, they can find community. Their mom has always gone there. There's usually older women there because, men, we die off first and, our wives stay behind. But, and that's the thing. A lot of churches want to focus so much on getting young men.
Yeah.
But forget about retaining them. They can't even get them through the door. And so what's it been like for, I guess, what is something that you all are doing then that you think is bringing in these young men besides just it's become a trend online that they're finding out about this?
Well, what brings them in is that trend online many times, but what retains them is they feel a sense of belonging. They don't, once again, there's no masculinity has been preserved, but I say again, so is femininity. And I guess maybe the men are attracted, and the women that come to us are attracted to that male and female, he created them. This is not to cast aspersions on people who are doubting their gender. Okay?
Yeah, I understand.
No. If they're doubting their gender, I'm not trying to beat anybody down. Not that we accept gender transition, but that we have this clear demarcation between male and female. He created them. So it's not uncommon for our women to wear head coverings. Yeah.
And that's biblical to wear head coverings.
And everybody did it until about 100, 200 years ago.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You think of, you may be too young, but women used to wear bonnets and hats at Easter.
Yeah. I've seen the big Easter hats before when I lived in Louisville.
That was like a remnant of head coverings. Roman Catholics used to wear the doilies and the head coverings. And if you go to the Latin Mass, I'm sure a lot of them still do. Maybe some of them in the Novus Ordo. We don't... Our bishops don't, there isn't some sort of injunction to wear this. Most of our women willingly. My wife was one of them. I never even talked to her about wearing a head covering. She just they're wearing one. But if she forgets it, she'll still come to church.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think the reason is for wanting to do that? Is a lot of it just seeing that's what other people are doing, I take part? Or is it that they're reading the Bible and say, okay, it says that I should do this?
All the above.
Okay.
They just know that this is the way. I sometimes, to teach in a winsome way, I'll say, this happened like head coverings until God changed his mind in the 1960s. And that's a way of making a point, It wasn't necessarily the 1960s, but I do tend to kind of, take the 60s because a lot of good things happened in the 60s. Yeah. So the civil rights movement was probably the best thing that happened in the 1960s.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. But there were, with the sexual revolution and a lot of did you know in I think it was 68, New York Times, proclaimed God is dead. Mm-hmm. That's where they were at.
It was a huge cover. It's still quoted to this day.
God is dead. That's just a horrible, what a horrible time. Mm-hmm. And now I think the response would be either no, he's not, or who cares? In other words, it's no. Okay, so some people are agnostic atheists, be like, yeah, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then those of us who believe God is not dead. That was a movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We don't mention it because of other things that are tied to that right now, but yep.
I'm so out of touch. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I'll tell you later, man.
Okay.
Don't worry.
I don't know nothing about it.
It kind of seems like, I'm not going to say like maybe you would use the word like disconnected in some way. Some of these references that I've thrown out.
It's not that I'm completely disconnected, but yes, there's probably things happening now I didn't get on X, now, formerly Twitter, until the war in Russia and Ukraine broke out. And I thought it would draw us in, and I thought I need to get news, real news. Mm-hmm. And so that's what got me on X. And that's kind of put me in touch. What is the name of the one guy? Protestia? There's a guy on there that gives news on Protestantism. Okay. And he just all sorts of different stuff. So so now, whereas maybe I would have missed it, John MacArthur passed away. I actually saw it on X. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little more in touch, but no, there's probably things that I'm totally out of touch with.
And I kind of say it half jokingly because in the evangelical world, which is my world, I'll be honest, it's a mess sometimes because kind of like just how people are, like there's a celebrity culture that can persist. Mm-hmm. And so then there's drama, and Christian artists get mad at each other for saying different things, and sometimes it can become a holier than thou art contest. And then obviously when you build people up so high, and this can even happen in any local church, when the pastor has a moral failure of some sort, everyone gets spread.
So God is not dead had something like that.
And I'm going to talk to you about it later. I'm not talking about it.
We don't need to talk about it.
Oh, goodness.
Whether it be a movie or a sermon or a movement, is greater than the person's moral failings. I think you look at King David. Mm-hmm. He had a big, huge moral failing with Bathsheba, and yet there he is. And, right in the middle almost of our liturgy, when the priest, he's doing a lot of sensing, and I'm saying Psalm 51, the Psalm of the adulterer. Mm. It's almost like right before we take communion too. It's not, there's not much more after that. We're admitting before God we're spiritual adulterers. We know we've went astray, but have mercy on us, O God. And we look toward King David as a model of repentance. Mm-hmm. And so the moral failings of our leaders doesn't negate the message. No.
Absolutely.
Our message of the gospel of Jesus Christ is greater than our own. And the prayers of the priest in the liturgy, when I pray, I'm up there and I say, Lord, these are I don't exactly remember exactly how they go, and the people don't even hear me saying this. There's some prayers we're just praying while they're singing or whatever, and don't let my own unworthiness affect the body and blood I'm about to give out to these people. Just, Lord, please come and visit us despite me, not because of me.
Absolutely. I'd love to talk to you about the liturgy of the Orthodox Church. I always joke, sometime I really don't. I don't agree sometimes when people say, well, we're a liturgical church or a high church, mainly because every church is a liturgical church.
I understand.
All of us have our liturgy. Like for my background, it's 3 songs, pray, sermon, prayer, altar call, song, and you throw announcements somewhere in the middle of that.
Yes.
So that would be a lot of mine and my viewers' churches, our liturgy. Tell me about what a church service looks like for you all.
Wow. So on a Sunday morning, we actually have 2 services, matins, the morning service that precedes liturgy, and it flows right into it. So I won't even go. I mean, I could be, this would be a lot, but I'll just say whatever. A lot of people come in at different points too, but what you're going to hear, one thing you're going to not hear is dead spots. There's never a point where there's more than a couple seconds of like nothing, where it's dead, where somebody's walking up to the podium or where something's being queued up or whatever. There's none. Yeah. It's a flowing service where there's always either chanting, singing, communion being distributed, a sermon being given. There's always, it's a flow, our service flows. And that's why there were a couple of folks who were clergymen in a Protestant church, and they converted and became Orthodox. One of them came out of a very charismatic type worship background. The other one was very, liturgical, but they like met in Orthodoxy and it fused it all together. It's like the fullness of faith.
Yeah.
So you have this fusion of, you've got your skeleton or your liturgical prayers we pray every week, but then there's variables that change every week too.
How much of that are you doing versus like a lay person would do?
Well, sometimes we're doing the same, and we're also not linear, circular.
Interesting.
So you go around, and there are processions. Our deacons are going out and around to do the prayers. And so much of the service is actually chanted by our choir and or a chanter. It depends on the parish. Some parishes may have 1 or 2 or 3 chanters. We have more of a full choir, maybe about 10, 12 people. And of that, maybe and then it's not that like they're all singing at one time. Sometimes it's like, sometimes there's one point where the men and the women sing antiphonally, go back and forth.
That's interesting.
Kind of cool. There's times where they take turns where one sings this verse and then somebody else and somebody else. Yeah. And so also there's times, and in much of our service, because we're blessed to have deacons, not all Orthodox churches have ordained deacons. So we have in our church, our clergy, there's steps, there's an order. So you're ordained as a reader to begin with, where you read the New Testament, let's say, then a subdeacon, which means you're under a deacon, and then a deacon. Deacons are part of the major order of clergy. And then priest or presbyter. Now, priest in English is a really interesting word because and I think that's why there's a lot of confusion, because in English, priest takes in 2 totally different concepts. On the one hand, it is a contraction of presbyter, elder, this is what everyone would say is a pastor. Presbyteros in the book of Acts, the presbyters. It's translated as elder in most English translations. I think that's unfortunate. I think there's reasons for that. But if it was translated presbyter, I think it would bring that, that out better. So there's that meaning, but there's also the meaning of Yerus in Greek, or Kohen in Hebrew, one who sacrifices, offers up sacrifice. 2 totally different things. Now, the presbyter functions as a hieros, one who offers up the sacrifice, but they're 2 totally different things, and I'll tell you why. So with Kohen hieros, all of God's people are part of the priesthood of all believers. It might shock you that Orthodox believe in that. It's not a Protestant concept only. So we have we offer up to the Lord sacrifices of praise and thanksgiving, and we offer up the bread and the wine, not just the priest. And that's why I don't say I offer up to you. I say we. So I'm the one that has been put in that place by the bishop to represent and in the name of everyone offer up the bread and the wine to God with praise and thanksgiving. That's why we call it the Eucharist, Eucharistia, great thanksgiving.
Awesome.
And then we ask God to come and be present and change the bread and the wine into the body and blood, but not cannibalism. That's all I can say. I can't explain it. It's a mystery.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's very interesting to me about the Orthodox Church is that we live in a day and age of pragmatism. And I feel like sometimes, and I've been tempted in this as well, that we've taken the spiritual, the truly spiritual and the divine elements and knowing that, yes, it's not just a saying that God is present with us. His Spirit is present in this place. And in every action within the liturgy is pointing to that. In fact, one of my favorite writings, that, forgive me, it was in college so long ago, I can't remember who wrote it.
But, I understand.
But one of the things that I remember was said about the Orthodox Church is that when worship happens, it's not just that you all or we are worshiping, but actually it's that the presence of God is there. And in some churches, you can even look up to the ceiling. And how's the ceiling painted in many of these churches?
You have Christ, the Pantocrator.
It's painting Christ there in heaven. And like it's not just that we're doing our thing down here, but we're participating alongside heaven. Let me go back to a moment and say, okay, you talked about chanters. What are you talking about? for people who have never been to a Catholic church or an Orthodox church, what is a chanter?
So they're singing. Chant just means to sing.
Okay.
So they're singing. You could call them hymns or portions of the service. Some things are like we have the great doxology. Some people are familiar with that from
Praise God from whom all blessings flow.
So this is more of the glory to God in the highest, on earth peace, goodwill. Glory be to God on high. That's the Lutheran version. Earth peace, goodwill toward men. That's the Lutheran version. We hymn thee, we bless thee, we worship thee. So that's the doxology, and it's in glory to God the highest, on earth peace, goodwill among men. It's in the Western liturgy. It's in our matins. I think it traveled from the east to the west, so they liked it so much. They're like, oh, we like what they do in matins. We're going to put it right in our liturgy. It's the Gloria in Excelsis. That's a phrase for you. It's the glory in the highest.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's where we chant. The choir chants that antiphonally, men and women. Most don't, though. Most you might hear one or two, or the whole choir sing it. But the congregation sings along too, as much as they know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And so you have verses, like let's say for the saint of the day, the theme of the day, if we're remembering Christ's baptism, you'll have is a point called the praises in matins, where you'll have different verses. I'll call them verses. They might have a sentence or two in them, and one person, they take turns chanting that, They talk, oh, thou Christ, who was baptized in the Jordan for our sakes, we give glory to thee. I'm making this up. I don't remember it by heart, but who did step into the waters, and then it gets poetic. The waters fled. Like the waters are like, who is this stepping into this water?
Let me ask you this. We've talked about these couples who've been coming to your church, these younger couples. What backgrounds are they coming from? Are they coming from no church background? I know we have a lot of Catholics that are in this area. Are you getting people who maybe just weren't satisfied with non-denominational evangelical Christianity? Like what kinds of backgrounds are these people coming to your church with?
It's all over the map. But more and more it's people who have maybe in the past had some church participation, but we don't get as many coming right out of another church into our church. I mean, we might get some, but not as much as people who maybe haven't been in church for 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years.
So there was a break at some point.
Oftentimes, that's the trend now. Maybe not so much 10 years ago, but now the trend, because less and less people go to church. So, I'll give you one. This is really interesting. He's a single guy. I was actually driving a car with him. We actually went on a monastic retreat to a monastery, and I was just talking to him, and I talked about a pew. He goes, "What?" I said, "A pew. I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, and he grew up in Lagodi.
Really?
But he didn't have any church background. And I said, so he was driving, so I got a picture of a pew and showed it to him. He goes, "Oh, I've seen them in movies." So we get some folks that just are unchurched.
Yeah.
They're their background. They don't. And in some ways it's good in a way. We don't have to kind of, but really at the end of the day though, it's better to have some sort of normally better in every tradition or whatever. Some people have had very difficult times, but it's a different challenge to bring people up to speed with a faith. I was talking to another couple about the pearl of great price, and they're wonderful people. They're just coming into our church, and they're like, "We never heard that." See, so. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you this then. I know in my background, evangelical background, we some churches emphasize this more than others. I'm iffy about how I feel about this exact wording. They talk a lot about being born again. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
Believers' baptism obviously ties into that theology.
Yeah.
Then there's also like a big deal about salvation experience.
Yeah.
Like there's this radical encounter with God. You had it, you prayed at the altar, everything changed. And this is kind of how we view evangelism, these salvation conversations. In the Greek Orthodox Church, once again saying Greek Orthodox,
okay.
Forgive me. But a lot of it is the family oriented. Baby is baptized, raised up in the church alongside the family. This is the goal. This is what you want. What does it look like to, I don't know if y'all would use this wording, lead someone to Christ in a conversation who comes into your church? They have no Christian background at all. They did not know Jesus before they got there. What does those conversion conversations look like in your background?
So when I was at my Christian college, I knew evangelicals who would say, "I've always known Jesus."
Yeah.
They never had a crisis conversion. They're like, "When I was 3 years old, I accepted Jesus. When I was 4 years old." So
I was 5.
See, so the crisis conversion doesn't necessarily, and you're aware of this, you're an evangelical, have to happen. And in that way, we have that in common that, we baptize, Colossians, it says that baptism is a new circumcision. So circumcision was done to infants, so we baptize. And also historically, we can trace that goes back all the way to the apostles. But the hope is that when one is brought into the family of God through baptism, well, the surety is that they are born again in baptism, born again of the water and of the word. They're born again. They receive the Spirit of God. Good old Martin Luther. Why do we baptize infants? He said, because infants too believe. Dave was ahead of his time. Infants are not blobs. Infants understand and know the voice of their mother and their father and their priest. Before they even get out, they know me. And
can I interject really quickly with a question?
Yeah.
So, oftentimes we see, and this even happens evangelical church, people are raised in church and they fall away. Yeah. Sometimes they come back.
Yeah.
A lot of times, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So is the Spirit of God in that person when they're baptized as an infant and they hit 18 years old, they leave the church, they never come back, and they leave a life of sin?
Well, you just said that the Spirit of God is in them when they're baptized, but then later they leave the church at 18. That's just a fact. So we believe that we have free will.
Okay. So you believe there can be a
leaving,
overcounting of your faith,
a departure from your faith. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm not a Calvinist, so I would agree with you.
Apostasy, you're leaving your faith. So someone can leave the Christian faith to join another religion or become an atheist. So.
But then the other question is, can they come back from that?
Absolutely.
They can.
And what they do, Now, if they're actually raised in church to where mommy and daddy are bringing them regularly, usually between the ages of 7 to 10, they make their first private confession.
Okay.
And that's where of course, any Christian can just confess their sins to God. That's not even up for debate. But where private confession and absolution comes in, also known as sacrament of reconciliation, is where it gives the person the ability to individually confess to God, with me as their witness, the things that really are troubling them. Of course, they can't confess every sin. They don't even know it. I mean, matter of fact, one of the things you say in it is things I've done, whether I know or don't know them. But it gives the priest, the pastor, a chance to give them guidance and reassurance. I've had women confess abortions, and I'm able to reassure them of God's love for them. It's an individual application of God's grace. So if you're raised in the church and you fall away, you know the first thing I need to do is come back and make confession. Not in a legalistic manner, not in some sort of a demanding, no, it's more of I want healing. And where do I find my healing? Now, for churches that don't have the sacrament of reconciliation or confession absolution, like even most evangelicals, that's called pastoral counseling. They need comfort, so they end up going to the pastor and he gives them comfort in a counseling session. Yeah. Whereas, and I do far less pastoral counseling because we have this wonderful, now we use sacraments is nothing less than a Latin translation of the word mysterium, the mysteries of, so the Lord's Supper is a mystery. Baptism is a mystery. Marriage is a mystery. Paul even says so. But it's translated into Latin as sacrament. It comes into English as sacrament. But we Orthodox use the terms interchangeably. Okay. So that's how you come back. Sense. You just know, I need healing. And I need to go to confession.
What if someone was to be raised in the Orthodox Church and either take a break or go straight from there to say, hey, I started dating a girl. She goes to this really exciting non-denominational church. I'm going to go there and I'm going to go there instead. What do you think about it when they make that transition?
That's their choice.
Absolutely.
What else can I say?
I know you disagree with it theologically. The change it theologically.
I mean, if you believe in, look, there's either people who really believe in what they're in or people that just kind of whatever. And the people that really believe in what they're in think the whole world should be Baptist or Pentecostals or evangelicals or none of that, non-denominational. You know, we're us Orthodox, but people make choices and they make that choice, then we're not going to, I always tell people what I tell people, and we don't get a lot of people, we don't have many people that leave our church, but when they do, I say, you're always welcome back. Yeah. That's what I say to them. Unless they're real mean, but most I'm teasing. But no, really, they're always welcome back for the most, Yeah.
It's interesting. And I think that would be a thing a lot of pastors struggle with. I talk about it on the show a lot, the fear of losing people. And sometimes you're so willing to make concessions.
That's not us.
Yeah.
We have our own struggles. If you want us, to talk about our struggles, I can, but that's not us. We are who we are. We're not going to change who we are to retain people. We're timeless. We don't have to worry about being relevant. We are relevant just by virtue of being the church and being faithful to Holy Scripture, reading it, teaching it, preaching it, doing the services that have been handed down to us. One of the wonderful things that I didn't know about when I converted as a pastor. Now, I wasn't assured of becoming a priest. You have to kind of, there's an old reference that only baby boomers will know, the Nestea plunge. You don't even know what that is. It's an old commercial for the tea, Nestea, and they'd have them jump off into like the ocean or whatever, and whatever happens. And so you have to just kind of, I'm willing to be a layman, but if you can use me, you can use me. But where was I going with that? Help me out.
I don't remember, honestly.
But we were talking about retaining people, weren't we?
Yeah, you're talking about the relevancy of the church.
Yeah, so we don't have to change who we are. It's just who we are. That. Who we are is who we are.
Yeah. And I didn't know this part about your church.
I know what I was going to do.
Okay, go on.
Every service of every day is already given to us worldwide, where the pastor don't even have input into what's sung, what's prayed, the texts of scripture read, every service. So each day you begin with great vespers, which it means evening prayer, evening service, little comp line, midnight office, first hour, you have, I don't remember the exact order, matins, liturgy, third hour, sixth hour, ninth hour. I mean, and then you start Vespers. The beginning of the liturgical day is Vespers, but I don't even have a choice to pick hymns, to change services. So we don't have any fighting over worship. And it's powerful.
Because it's been decided.
Settled. It's settled.
Yeah. I'd like to touch on that. We talked about it a little bit on our phone conversation we had a couple months ago. How does leadership work in your church? Because I don't know what wording you would use, but you planted your church, it was like this. It wasn't here before you moved here. Right. You told me before we got started that it was out of your house when you started because there was another option. What does the leadership look like? Like, who's making decisions when buying a building, building a building? Like, who's making those decisions for the church? Is it just you? Does the congregation have a say? How's that done?
Oh, it's a collaborative effort.
Okay.
So here, this was the largest metro area in the country without an Orthodox Church of any kind: Russian, Greek, Romanian, you name it.
Wow.
There's different reasons for that. There was just never enough of an immigration wave of Greeks or Russians or Romanians or Bulgarians.
Just a lot of Germans.
A lot of Germans. In English. Kentucky's got a lot of English. Indiana, a lot of Germans. But and then there was never a group of fired up converts that converted to Orthodoxy and formed a church. In some places you have this group of converts, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, Jesus movement people. That didn't happen here either. So there was a vacuum. So our mission director, Father Peter Gilquist, he tapped me, and I was actually going to go on active duty as an Army chaplain. I had 8 good years toward retirement in the Army Reserve. I loved it. Walked out my in-laws' steps. It was on the feast of the falling asleep of Mary, the Mother of God, August 15th. Missed a step, messed my foot up, never would heal. My wife says that the Mother of God tripped me. Didn't want me to go in the military full time, but it was a huge disappointment. Huge. I love the military. But so Father Peter, the mission director over the country of the Antiochian Archdiocese, he said, well, it doesn't look like the military is going to work for us. How would you like to go to Evansville and plant a church? And I said, well, I was going to go to Afghanistan or Iraq. I guess I can go to Evansville. So we came here. My wife is a nurse. We had just one person in my family. That's it.
Wow.
And he constructed our website. And the priest, a dean is like the head priest of your area, geographic area. It can be a state, or it can be different portions of different states. And he's like, well, you got to have a Christmas service. I said, it's 1 week away. Everything's in boxes. How do I do this? You got to have it. So that's where it's the house. I'm like, I'll do it right in here. Yeah. How else am I going to do it? I can't have time to go out and find something.
Going right back to the early church.
That was no problem for me. With my background out of the Jesus movement, I have no problem.
Wow. So it kind of prepared you for that way.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes. The Jesus movement, they taught me how to do street witnessing, I mean, as a gentleman, walk up to people, not be real confrontative. Hey, would you like me to talk to you about Jesus? Are you? And it's wonderful people in that movement. And I actually did a lot of work in inner city Detroit.
Man.
I mean, it was a great time.
Yeah.
But anyways, we after 3 months, we ended up at the Washington Campus Medical Center. It's now a knee brace clinic. I don't know what the latest name for it is. It's on Washington Avenue across the street from Old National.
Okay. What does that building look like?
It's a big old building with a big parking lot, but you go in and then there's an elevator, and we had the entire bottom level. Man. And it was perfect because you walk out the door and there's like what was a break room. Well, that was our fellowship hall.
Yeah.
And you wind around, and there's this big spacious area. It didn't have high ceilings, but for worship, and it had former meeting rooms for appointments, and turns into our Sunday school room. So we were there from 2010 to 2016, I think.
How did you decide the name of your church?
And this will get into the leadership. Our bishop at the time so we're under the Diocese of Toledo. So
okay. Wow. Okay.
Toledo, Ohio. Yeah, it goes all the way down to Kentucky, Minnesota, Ohio, everything, Missouri.
Yeah.
And remember, there's overlapping jurisdictions in this country, and was never planned. That's a whole different podcast. The history of if you ever want to do another one, it'd be interesting. The history of the Orthodox Church in America, and it would kind of show some of our shortcomings. Really would, because it's not canonical. It's not the way we're supposed to be ordered. We're not supposed to have more than one bishop in an area.
Yeah.
And that just happened. I'll give a little teaser. The communist revolution.
Interesting.
In the Soviet Union caused a crisis because most of us were under Russia at that time. And then they wanted, when the Soviets took over the communists, they wanted all the churches sold here and give them all the money. And the American people are like, no way.
Really?
I don't want to go any further. I'll spoil if we do have another one of these. But anyway, so our bishop, he gave us a list of 4 saints' names, and he stacked the deck. He gave common names like St. John, for us, St. Basil, that's kind of common. And then St. Ananias. And we're like, St. Ananias. And the icon for St. Ananias is of him baptizing the Apostle Paul, Saul of Tarsus. It's a perfect icon for a mission church, baptism. And so we voted, and we liked him, so we submitted it to him. And then he, in turn, submitted it to our metropolitan bishop, who's over all of North America. And at the time, it was Metropolitan Philip, and he loved it. We are the only St. Ananias that I'm aware of in all of North America of any kind.
Wow. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's an awesome responsibility, too.
Absolutely. If you fail, there's only one thing to look up.
Oh, yeah.
How does evangelism work? You're planning this church. When I think of Orthodox, I keep saying Greek Orthodox because I associate it I associate it so much though with ethnicity.
But many of our members are Russians, Ukrainians, Romanians.
Well,
we have.
But that's kind of what I think of it as. It's like, okay, I'm Greek. I go to Greek Orthodox Church. I'm Russian. I go to Russian Orthodox Church. I'm Ukrainian and go here. And some people I hear people nowadays even refer to Coptic Orthodox, Egyptian Orthodox.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think about like that. You're planning it here without a huge Greek, Russian, Ukrainian population.
Right.
There's pockets, but how are you evangelizing to these people who have no idea maybe what even the Orthodox Church is?
Talking about non-Orthodox.
Yeah. So how did you bring together that first group that made up St. Ananias?
The website. It's, when we first came here, it was 2009, December, and I actually put an ad in the paper. Yeah. And it was there for a year or 2 or 3. But over that time, I say unfortunately, we all, my background, we used to, every morning the paper guy would come, and I'd up in Detroit, I'd open up the paper and look at the sports scores, and I'd actually read the paper, actually read articles and all that. That's now, thank God, the digital Courier and Press. I'm not, everybody subscribe to the Courier and Press, keep it alive, local news. But really, a lot of it is the website. And I got into the Facebook before, when I got in 2010, there weren't many churches.
2009 is still kind of early to get a website for a church.
I know. We were out ahead of a Facebook page. None of our churches had Facebook pages. And I was kind of felt, hey. So on our website, it said news, and you click it, and it just went right to our Facebook page.
Wow.
So the guy managing the page don't have to click, you just keep the Facebook page current. And so that has been a powerful means of getting the word out. So you got that aspect of it, but you have, it's as ancient as Christianity, this brother brought this brother, right? Come and see.
And so, word of mouth is undefeated.
That's absolutely right. So in my sermons, I emphasize go out and share the faith. Go out and invite someone to church. And so you have that aspect of it too, word of mouth.
Was it ever kind of weird? I imagine there was at least some people who came to that church. They had an Orthodox background, and they're like, "Finally, it's here."
Yeah.
And then you're in the basement of a storefront, not the large ceilings, not the you've put up the iconography, but not the stained glass windows or any of that. The beautiful architecture people would think about. What was it like, kind of confronting that? Like, hey, this isn't established. This is something that we're starting.
Well, I knew there had been several laudable attempts to plant Orthodox churches out of from the Greek Orthodox Church in Louisville and from the Antiochian Orthodox Church in Indianapolis. They had tried for years.
Wow.
Great, and they met in a house downtown. The Greeks did. There were people baptized there. They did good work. Just nobody. A pastor had never lived here. So I knew coming here, I'll come to Papa, and they'd be like, yeah, right, how long are you going to last? I mean, that'd be, that's what it was, I think, for some. It's like, and coming from Orthodox countries, they'd never seen this. I mean, they already, like you said, had established churches, been around for hundreds of years, some over 1,000 years. And so, but by now they know, he's legit. I mean, this church made up of people from all over the world is legit. But it was a challenge at first with respect to cradle Orthodox. But I think not just cradle Orthodox, just people who are just seeking. They come into a basement, and it's some people are into that and some people aren't. But I think it produced a hearty group of people. If what you really want is God through the Orthodox services, you're going to come whether you're whether you're in a basement, whether you're huddled together in a tower being bombed, whether you're being persecuted and you're underground, wherever, some beautiful cathedral in the middle of a Orthodox city, it doesn't matter because you have the wonderful services of the Orthodox Church, which within them have the Holy Scriptures and the sacraments and mysteries of the Church. I mean, you'll go wherever. Yeah. If that's what you want. If you really want God, you'll go.
Would you say your biggest challenges when it's come to being the priest over your church was the biggest challenges you faced in the beginning starting out, or was it later on after everything got going?
For me personally, it was starting because I had pastored a fairly large church, Lutheran church, 700 people, 300 plus in attendance. And I was used to a volume of work with people, counseling, visiting, this, that, and the other. And coming here, now I did go to Orthodox seminary in between, but coming here, I've got 20, 25 people showing up, and most of them weren't needy. So I'm like, here I am. And it was challenging. That was hard.
Yeah, just sitting around twiddling your thumbs.
Well, I made myself productive. My first few years in the Lutheran pastorate were similar. I ended up getting a church of 25, 30 people coming out of Lutheran seminary. And but somebody said, you should, make use of your time, do a doctorate of ministry. So actually, I have all but my dissertation at Reformed Theological Seminary, RTS, for a doctorate of ministry. So I made use of my time. And the early years here, I would read, I'd pray, I always make use of my time.
Yeah.
I just can't. I'm not a thumb twiddler.
Yeah, but it was hard because there wasn't the hustle.
There wasn't relationships. There wasn't. I'm used to talking to people. And I didn't have that. That was my wife. She had an outlet. She went to work, and she was a nurse. My children, we homeschooled them the first year and a half. But when they were gone to school, that was the tough time for me personally.
I imagine.
Now, a lot. I mean, we're planning a mission in Owensboro. Tomorrow morning, we're doing a liturgy, 10:15 a.m., Brescia University. I mean, I'm busy, but I'm more at home at being busy.
I understand.
But not for busyness' sakes. I'm more at home with people. I love people. When I was finishing at the Lutheran seminary, I had a big high grade point average, and a lot of them I peers thought I'd be a professor. I kind of had that kind of a mind. I didn't have the personality. And I really look up to and respect scholars. They have to spend long hours in their offices or wherever writing and rewriting and researching. And I'm good at it. When I write papers, I get A's. I always get, but I just don't. I'd rather take somebody that's struggling to get off alcohol to the ER than I would write a paper.
You have a pastor's heart at the core.
Yeah, not that they don't, but their pastor's heart's leading them towards scholarship.
Yeah.
My pastor's heart leads me toward interacting with people.
That's great. As we wrap up, there's one question I wanted to ask at some point in this interview. There's been no transition to it now. There has been a lot of talk online recently, especially with there's kind of been this movement of Catholicism and Orthodox that we've talked about. So with that, it's been a lot more relevant in the news, and a lot more people are talking about it because a lot more people want to hear about it. And there's been talk that there's starting to be a reconciliation between the Orthodox and Catholic Church. People have even spread rumors online that there's going to be a reunification of sorts from the Great Schism.
Yeah.
And there's even talk about Vatican III possibly being done later. At least that's what they're calling it. As you as a local priest serving this local group of people, but also still very much connected to the greater universal church, what are your thoughts on when people have these conversations? Do you think it's just, it's really good clickbait and it gets people's attention? Or basically, what do you think should be, if you had it your way, what you think is right, what you think God wants for the church, how would you see that relationship going forward, not just between Catholics, but even Protestants as well?
No comment. No, I'm teasing you.
You had me.
So there are people who have devoted their whole life toward dialogue, ecumenical dialogue, from the Orthodox Church at high levels with both the Roman Catholics and Protestants, and their life's work speaks for itself. If we stop talking, then we'll never get anywhere. I mean, I think we should speak with. We're called by the name of Christ. We're called Christians. So how can we not have those who are appointed to those positions by their bishops, or the bishops themselves, speak to the Roman Catholic bishops or representatives of the Roman Catholic Church, Protestants and the like? We'll put everybody under the word Protestant. That word, in some ways, it's meaningless nowadays. So yet it's a useful term or what have you. And so you have them devoting their life's work toward this, and so where that will go, only God knows. But on the ground level, there's a lot of challenges, and especially, 100 years ago, you had the World Council of Churches. Yeah. And then you had the American version of it, and you'd have Presbyterians and Methodists and Orthodox and Roman Catholics talk. Our stances on issues of morality, for instance, have diverged so much
major
with
shift.
Some of us.
Absolutely.
That, I mean, it's right now it's irreconcilable.
Yeah.
I have no problem saying that as a local priest. Right now, like for instance, abortion on demand, we'll say, it's irreconcilable.
Yeah.
But, with respect to, let's say, the Roman Catholic Church, I'll just give you one issue that would be a challenge, and that's our approach to communion, giving communion to infants and little children. That would have to be worked through. I don't know how easily. I don't know, because
you're talking about such old beliefs.
Old beliefs, and from the Roman Catholic standpoint, they have what they call Eastern Catholics and there's different reasons for that historically. From their end, well, we have both traditions. See, and they're fine. They're fine with what we do, but from our end, it's different, and that would have to be worked through with the people above me. I think fasting. We're in the in the Great Lent. Do you know you keep the fast to the T in Great Lent? No meat, no dairy, nothing. Not even fish. Did you know that? Not even fish Monday through Friday. Some people keep to that completely. Some people modify it. Everyone's different. But what we don't do is we don't, as a whole, just change that. And the West, first, we have a Wednesday, Friday fast that goes all the way back to the apostles. The Didache, the teaching of the apostles, dated about 80 to 100 A.D. It has Wednesday, Friday fast, remembering his betrayal and his crucifixion. We just can't depart from that. So just at a ground level, we can't. Well, that's our tradition, and your tradition is to fast. Right now, it's twice a year with the Roman Catholic Church. They're mandated to fast on Good Friday and Ash Wednesday. All these things would have to, and I just mentioned a couple things.
Yeah.
Lay people bringing communion to people. Just the Orthodox are not going to accept that and say, well, that's our tradition, but we'll be under one umbrella.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating the cutting off of dialogue. I'm just this guy.
Yeah. These are real things. And you didn't even hit on some of the major ones, like you can't be married and go be a priest in the Catholic Church.
Well, actually, married converting Lutherans and Episcopalians can be brought in as priests in the Catholic Church. They have a way. Did you know that?
I have no. This is the first time I've ever heard about this.
Yeah. The key thing is priests can't get married, but married men can become priests in the Orthodox Church. So if you're ordained as a single man in the Orthodox Church, you can't date and get married. Yeah. That's canon law. If my wife passes away, I can't date and get married. That's hard.
Yeah.
I had the dean of students at St. Tikhon's Orthodox Seminary. His wife passed away. They got in an accident just a few months after being married. And if my memory serves me correctly, he might have been in a coma. And when he woke up and found out, and he, and there was some talk of, well, maybe you're so young. Nope, that's my wife. I'm not going to ever. Man. And he devoted himself toward biblical scholarship. Yeah. He's a scholar of the Holy Scriptures, and he's a bishop now. Wow. And so, but yes, as you're talking about, so you have this layer of the Holy Scriptures, but for us, we have canon law and the ecumenical councils that we adhere to. So let's say with union with the different Protestant groups, the whole thing where a pastor can date, for instance, that's just so it's unthinkable.
There's a practical side. Let me give you one that you're really gonna, your viewers. When we choose godparents for children, sponsors. If someone is a godparent for a child, that person, the godparent's children, can't get married to the person they're being the godparent to. So there can't be like that. So it's almost as like your family in a way. Like you can't mix.
You can't. And this is what's hard. Our parish is full of young families with kids.
And they're all friends together.
But they can't be each other's godparents. Because it would preclude their 1-year-old from dating the other's 2-year-old someday. Because we do have a lot of young girls. Born. We won't have any problem with the mix of male female about 10, 20 years from now there. Yeah. But so that dynamic is something you don't even think about. So we've got this. This is non-negotiable with us.
There's no exceptions.
Very rarely. I'm sure in some crag of the world there's an exception, but I'm just saying by and large that's who we are. Yeah. And to even matrix that with the Roman Catholic Church or the Orthodox or the Protestant churches, I'm just giving there's just so many things. So extreme challenges with respect to actual administrative and or organic unity. But yet I'm thankful and pray for those who've been directed to dialogue and talk.